and you could see through it. And you could see his skin. His skin was a little bit ashy, but it was dark brown. And it I hear on a lot of these encounters how, sometimes when these things come in that you get like dread and you start thinking about, bad things and stuff like that. It didn't really do that to me. It just piqued my curiosity. But the sun was going down and I didn't know what it was. It looked too real to think it was somebody in a suit. I knew it wasn't that. I knew I was dealing with something paranormal, at least. So I finally got the kahunas up, and I stood up on my stand and I yelled at it, "Hey!" And when I did that, I don't know, these things move like nothing I've ever seen in my life. I'm shaking. I'm shaking real bad right now because I'm going back to the way this thing moved.
Yeah, it's very strange, almost kind of unnatural. You know what I mean?
It's like this thing popped up, but it's like it was sitting down. It didn't use its legs. I don't know if it just pushed up real quick, so fast I couldn't see, but this thing popped up in the air onto its feet and was looking, doing 360s. He was looking for the source of the sound and he couldn't see me, and he started mumbling. He was doing that gibberish stuff that just that Tasmanian, that yo. That's what he was doing. But he was talking too. He was like trying to make sentences, and I couldn't make it out. He couldn't see me because I was hidden pretty good. I was up 30 foot in a tree, but when I hunt, I hunt to where I'm not skylined by animals and stuff where they can't see me. He couldn't make out the sound, and he was just going crazy, man. And then he let out a scream. Oh man, it sounded like a lady screaming, plus a bull, maybe a bull and a woman screaming. Very extremely deafening loud. He was very big. He had a huge head on him, cone-shaped head. No hair on his face. He had very, very little facial hair, but he had a profound brow ridge. He was unbelievably big boy. When he was walking, he was huge. It was like from his waist up was pretty big, but his legs and his arms were super long. Like his hands were going past his knees, and he was looking for the source of the sound. But when he stood up, when he was standing up, it wasn't like us, man. It was like his legs didn't lock out all the way. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, they have a very strange way of their stance, of a way of standing. I think it's knee placement is why it looks so weird, but I get exactly what you mean.
Yeah, his knees didn't lock out all the way. It was like they were still bent a little bit. And he was looking for the source of the sound, man. And he had his back to me. He had his back to me again, and I looked at him again in my scope, man, and I could see his fingernails. He had dirt under his fingernails. Like maybe when he was sitting down, he might have been digging in the dirt. I don't know. So I'm sitting there and I'm looking at the sun, man, and this guy's not going anywhere. He's not going anywhere. I'm thinking, okay, is he just gonna keep going? He wanted to know what the source of that sound was. So I just kind of said in a low voice, "Hey, I'm right here." When he turned around, he looked dead at me. His eyes were solid black, and his eyes got super big, and his mouth opened, and he started smiling. I don't know if that's some kind of defense thing they do or whatever, but he was smiling at me. And he started talking in that gibberish again, and he walked straight to me, 30 yards away. He wouldn't come any closer the whole time. I'm looking at him, And I'm starting to think, okay, am I going to get out of here alive? Because I'm not in a ladder stand, I'm in a jack-up stand. So I have to I'm thinking about this the whole time. I have to undo my harness. I have to jack down from this tree, and I got to face this animal to get out of here. The last thing that needs to happen is night needs to fall, because I've got a tiny little flashlight. I didn't bring my big flashlight because I knew I was on a power line. I knew I could get out. And he's sitting there. This encounter went on. He was 30 yards away from me for about a solid 25 minutes. He was looking at me, but he wouldn't look at me for long. It was like he would look away, but he wouldn't move. And every time I looked at him in his face, he would look at me crazy, and he would smile, and he would start grunting. So I tried not to look at him too much. I didn't want to look at him. He wasn't no fashion model, to say the least.
Yeah.
He had big square teeth like us, or kind of looked like horse teeth, to be honest with you, but they were perfectly white. And there was one time that he stuck his tongue out. I don't know what he was doing with that, but he had a big long pink tongue, and the insides of his mouth, like the insides of his cheeks, were black. But I didn't know what to think, man. I got this creature in front of me. It's daylight still. I can see, but he's not really being aggressive. It's like maybe he was curious, and I'm scared. I'm out of my mind the whole time, but I'm trying not to panic because I don't want this thing to read on that. So I'm sitting there, and I picked up my gun, and I looked at him again real close, and he backed up when I grabbed that gun again, because I had it on the side of me. I picked it up, and he backed up, and he turned his head and looked at me at the, he didn't turn his whole body, he just turned his head to the side and looked at me sideways. I think that's why I think these things know what guns are. It's like I picked it up to look at him real close. I had to take my scope, and I had to power it down because he was closer. And man, I'm telling you,
Yeah, and I don't mean to interrupt your encounter, but did the creature start backing up at this point?
He didn't. No, he never backed up. He just kind of just turned his head to the side and was looking at me with one eye, like, "Don't you do it." That's what I was getting off of him. "Don't you do it." So I started looking at him real close, and just the facial expressions this thing was making with the side of its jaw. I mean, he had a profound jawline that was just out of this world. His hair on top of his head was black. He was solid black hair, but I mean, he had a lot of hair on top of his head, is what I'm trying to say. I'm starting to think, why aren't we ever told about these things? I mean, I'm sure I'm not the only one that's ever seen something like this. I'm not, and unless this is God trying to tell me something, or if this is some kind of demon or what. So he starts pacing. This thing starts walking back and forth. It's like he's trying to decide if he wants to do something about me, or if he wants to go. He keeps walking back and forth, grunting, moaning. It's like he's getting impatient. And I'm thinking to myself, how am I going to get out of here? I'm going home. I'm not going to die. I got a high-powered rifle in my hand, and if I have to put it in his face and take the back of his cap off, I will. But I'd rather not. I just want this thing to go, and I want to get out of here. I'm half a mile down the power lines. I'm 500 yards down the power lines. So I finally had enough, and I said, "What do you want?" Very loud. When I did that, this thing freaked out. This thing started screaming again, and he screamed at me real close, Wes. And when he screamed, his eyes closed, and it's like his mouth got super big, and it looked like his face caved in on itself and then came back to normal, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it sounds like the creature was really pissed.
Yes, and then he kept blowing at me. He was hitting me with the. He was like, "You ain't going nowhere." And when he did them, you can feel it hitting you in your face and in your chest. It was like there was power behind it, man. It's like I can't explain it. I mean, he was far enough away from me then to where there's no way if he blew in the air, I can physically, feel the wind. It had some kind of power behind it. It was hitting me. It was like when you're in a parade and somebody's beating that big drum and you could feel that drum in your chest. That's what it felt like.
Yeah. And
he just took off. He ran about 50 yards. He hit that power line and he went back to all fours, went across the power line and just started tearing stuff up. He was pushing trees down. He was grabbing gallberry bushes and throwing them in the middle of the power lines. Then he would cross back over the power line behind me and he was wrecking shit up over there. He finally he never quit the whole time. He was just going apeshit. And he finally got far enough away from me. I would say 100 yards back there wrecking stuff. I come down out of that tree. I jacked down like a machine gun. I started running down the power lines, and I'm running. And we're talking about a 45-year-old chubby white boy scared out of his life.
Yeah.
Going down the power lines.